In school days, air means it's a combination of nitrogen, oxygen, and a number of other gases, inert gases. And as a HVAC engineer, air means dry air and moist air. Did we understand the air that we breathe? No, that is the answer by Major Witter. Her title given is Understand the Air That We Breathe. Again, talking about indoor air quality. He is the founder and director of Samtripti Engineers Limited. And he is a member of ISHRAE, and is a fellow of REHWA. She is having immense experience, more than 25 experience in the field of air conditioning, a postgraduate in engineering, mainly concentrating on sustainability in buildings. And HVAC, she is having immense experience both in India and abroad. Before coming to India, she was the member of Green Building Council in Finland. I take this opportunity to invite Madam for your presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm also very well known from the person who doesn't know how long to talk. So I actually took from the Lucknow presentation already 5 slides off, and I only had like 30 minutes there, so there is a small chance to do it on time. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I also nowadays consider myself more as an Indian than the European, because now last 5 years I have worked in India. I actually started my business in India as a third-party commissioning authority in the green buildings, but about 3 years back, when finally in India some clients realized that they have indoor air quality problems as well, I actually moved from Bangalore to Delhi, and nowadays all the projects we deal with has something to do with the indoor air quality. So therefore, what I'm telling you today is actually very different what I would have told you 5 years ago. The biggest learning is that there are like many reasons: climate, cultural reasons, the construction site, practice reasons, why lots of the Western technologies and solutions just simply doesn't work in India. And I go back to the architect whose name I don't remember right now. The South Indian names are still very difficult. I have a Tamil husband, but I still struggle even to pronounce the mother one properly. So yeah, Shankar, yeah. So I actually will talk first a little bit about what the air does for us. What are the things we need to be worried about when we talk about indoor air quality or air quality in general? And then the second part of the presentation focuses on the solutions, how to solve the issues. And maybe Gautam would have had actually an easier job to finish on time if I would have done my presentation first, but now I can skip a couple of things. Why the air is so important? You all are very, very cautious nowadays about the water you drink. Everybody has a bottled water in the table. No one is drinking tap water, because you know that the tap water may make you ill. You drink about, let's say, 1 to 3 liters of water maximum per day. You eat about 1 kg of food, and also we are starting to understand that what we eat has a huge impact to our health. But how many of you have given a thought for the air you breathe? As we breathe 12,000 liters of air every day. So from the health point of view, actually the air is more important than the water or the food. Of course, the clean air is the air where there are no harmful substances, so it's clean. And WHO has already stated year 2000 that it's one of the human basic rights to breathe clean air. We can now, in the indoor environment, there are actually two different kind of ways how these different things impact to our health. We can also say that the temperature, we can say that the draft, inadequate lighting, they all impact to our health as well. But they mainly impact through the stress. So bright light like this one here, or the very high noises, or the high temperature actually increases the stress hormone production in our body, and actually it's the stress reaction that causes us the symptoms. Where air is the only phenomenon which actually gets inside us. And that is why it is so much more important in terms of health than the other aspects. Then, when talking about the air pollution, 9 out of 10 people then comes back to me and say that, but madam, we can't clean the indoor air because we don't want to lose our immunity. Actually, the immunity is a big concern. I'm really worried about lots of technologies used today that unnecessarily sterilizes the indoor air. So we shouldn't lose our immunity. But now we then have to understand that we have an immunity against viruses, bacteria, especially when we are healthy people. We don't need to sterilize our indoor air. We just need to remove the harmful substances out. But then there is this one, especially the one pollution that we have no immunity. And that is why now every day, I'm sure even here the newspapers are writing articles about the PM2.5, the particulate pollution. Particulate pollution, there is no immunity. Particulate pollution, when we breathe the particulates in, the biggest particulates like dust is not harmful. Dust only irritates in eyes, it irritates in nose, but when we sneeze, the black thing comes out and we are fine. And India used to have lots of dust. Like everybody talks about when they were young, there was so much dust. Now the dust is less. That is true. Dust levels has come down, but the PM2.5 particulate levels has went up. So the kind of the particulate matter we have in our environment has changed. And now these smaller particulates typically comes from the burning process, but especially they come from the vehicles and power plants and so on. But what is special in India also is that in the Western countries, the particulate matter problem is typically an urban problem because it mainly comes from the vehicle emission, so it's in the cities. In India, we have two major sources of particulate matter and the PM2.5, which are very much rural problem as well. One is the household cooking. 700 million people cooks the daily meal still in chulla, where you burn a small fire with very poor burning process that produces lots of particulate matter. And the other one is the farming. When farmers, that's what the Delhi is actually suffering. That's why now the problem is so big, because the farming season has finished in UP, in Haryana. The farmers are burning the crop on the fields, and now just last week it hit to Delhi because the wind changed. The particulates were in the air, but the wind took them somewhere else. And now then, depending on where the winds are taking the particulate matter, the problems are equally in the cities and in the rural places. Of course, the Delhi levels you don't easily see anywhere else, because Delhi is also a valley, and this high pollution season also comes in the winter when the cold air stays in the valley and doesn't get out. That's why Delhi is worse. But I just checked that the annual average of Trivandrum 2016 database was showing 30 micrograms per cubic meter, which is 3 times higher than WHO safe level. So the particulate pollution is less here, but it's still an issue also in this part of the city, or in this part of the India. The 2.5 is the most difficult particulate size in that sense that when we talk about 0.01 micron particulate, when we breathe it in, it's so airborne that it typically, when we exhale, it actually comes out from our body. But the 2.5 is light enough to travel all the way to our lungs, but heavy enough not to come out. And that is one reason why everybody talks about 2.5, and of course also 1. So that they are the particulate sizes that actually gets into our lungs, starts to cover the lung surfaces, and never comes out from our lungs. And when we go to the 1 micron and even the smaller particulates, actually they don't even stop to the lungs. They get through the lung cells to our blood circulation, and start to block our blood veins, and they carry some metals. That's why they are carcinogenic. 2014, the International Cancer Organization has stated that the particulate matter is equally bad for human health than asbestos or tobacco smoke. It's a group 1 carcinogenic. And this kind of listing is not done without a solid scientific evidence. The particulate matter is actually linked to lots of different diseases. If I make the list and you think about the diseases that you have in your families or in your neighbors, starting of course from the reduced lung capacity, asthma, cardiovascular disease, lung cancer, diabetes, dementia, all these are the diseases that are rapidly increasing among the Indian population. And there is a scientific evidence that each one of these can be linked to the particulate pollution. So, in the particulate pollution, every particulate that we do not breathe is always a health impact, a health improvement. So even 20 minutes per day in a cleaner environment improves the health. Here are some pictures. If you don't believe me, believe your own eyes. 3 different lungs: healthy lung, tobacco smoker lung, and the person who has been living all life in Sao Paulo in Brazil, which is less polluted than, for example, Delhi. So it is a serious issue. So I actually disagree that indoor air in India is 100 times more polluted than the outdoor air. That is true in the Western countries, but because we have so severe outdoor pollution, it is more polluted because all the outdoor pollution first of all comes in, and then we have the indoor sources. But I don't think our indoor sources are about the same than in the Western countries, that we could really make it 100 times more because the outdoor pollution is already inside our buildings. Now the Delhi government says that stay indoors, but how does it help if you didn't purify the air, the outdoor air, before it came inside? It is true that typically you measure the levels which are about half from the outdoor pollution, but it's only because we have already filtered the air into our lungs. So the humans inside the buildings today are the filters that are filtering the air. Then we have another issue which even I myself used to kind of little bit underestimate, the CO2. We in this industry, we used to say that CO2 is an indicator for other air pollutions, and it is easy to measure, and that's why it is measured, but the CO2 itself is not really a health risk. And it is true, it's not a health risk, but CO2 definitely impacts to our performance. So we as an individual people wouldn't need to be too much worried about the CO2 levels, because if we get a little bit headache, we go home, we go outside, we take a little bit lower CO2 level air in, and the headache goes away. Our employers should be worried about the CO2 because it reduces our performance and our productivity. We are less productive workers for them. They should be worried about the CO2. Then this myth that you have to air condition the buildings to improve the air quality, it is not true. Air conditioning have nothing to do with indoor air quality. Air conditioning is to manage the temperature. Okay, the split AC has a filter, but that filter unfortunately typically filters only the flies and mosquitoes, but it has no impact on PM 2.5, for example. Neither it has an impact for gases, and neither it has an impact for any microbiological contamination. It is just there to protect the cooling coil not to get shot, so that the airflow keeps going on. And of course, now, due to the poor ventilation, and when we started to save the energy now, we all know that we need to save the energy. We have switched off the TFA units, we have closed the dampers that takes the outdoor air in, because we want to save energy. So it's not only the CO2 that increases, also the humidity level increases, leading to another problems that Gautam already talked about, mold and bacterial virus growth and so on. And then of course we have the TVOCs, like formaldehyde, which comes typically from the building materials, furniture, paints, adhesives, and so on. Now, the users, the building users are becoming more aware of indoor air quality, and they have started to demand better air quality from the employers. Building owners, facility management doesn't really know what to do with these buildings. Also, authorities are going to set more strict requirements for the indoor air quality in the future. And now we are actually in the situation that, like the architect also said, that the engineers or the doctors cannot save the Indian people and their health. You are the people who have to save the population in India. We have to start to design the buildings that are healthy for people, and main issue of a healthy building is an indoor air quality. Unfortunately, there is no education. Actually, there is no education on indoor air quality in India at the moment, except these few seminars. But if you would really want to learn and study these issues, it doesn't exist, neither in the college level or for the professionals. You can't go. Only thing is that you can Google it. That's one thing that ISHRAE as well should kind of start to think about, that where you can learn. I can do some knowledge sharing in 30 minutes, but I would actually need 2 to 3 days to truly go through every issue in terms of indoor air quality. No vendor can manage this issue. There are so many issues impacting these things, and all the time the new technology is coming to the market and so on. So it is very difficult for an HVAC engineering company or a contracting company truly understand what is the difference with photocatalytic oxidization and cold plasma technology compared to the HEPA filtration. Even I, after 30 years in this industry, I still struggle to understand what are all these technologies and processes, what do they truly do? And there are very few kind of good case studies about the good indoor air quality. There are few buildings now in Delhi. First project I did was an American embassy school. We did the audit and design 3 years ago. And last 3 years, the building has been operating with the PM 2.5 levels that are about 95% lower than the simultaneous outdoor levels. So it can be done. I saw there is a Paharpur business center in Delhi where I saw all the numbers are excellent. Even this week, they had 10 microgram per cubic meter PM 2.5 levels. So there are a couple of buildings, yes, but the industry in general is not aware of them. So that is a big thing. So these are the kind of the things, and also lots of air quality measurement has been done, but the reference values has been wrong. For example, PM 2.5. Most of the laboratories in India used to use the OSHA value, Occupational Safety and Healthy Organization values for PM 2.5, which says 5,000 micrograms per cubic meter is the limit value. It means in practice you have to have an open fire without chimney in the space to reach that level. Therefore, ISHRAE launched a little bit over 1 year ago actually one of the first indoor environment quality standards in the world. And this standard doesn't compromise indoor air quality because India is a developing country. If you fulfill these numbers, you can be sure that the occupants can live healthy life inside the buildings, and you can get any rating around the world with these levels. And now you don't need to say anymore that, yeah, that's in America, but what about in India? So India has a standard, and I just wish that if there are like clients and the consultants that you should start to specify the indoor air quality using this standard that you can purchase from the ISHRAE bookstore. Then the most sad thing actually in all of this is that indoor air quality improvements actually makes money for every stakeholder. If we take an office case, and the occupants, the people in the office, let's assume that the research is talking about the productivity improvements, 10%, 30% improvement in productivity if indoor air quality or thermal conditions are good. Let's just take 1 or 2%. That 1 or 2% would be enough to the tenant to pay 5% higher rent to the owner. Still they could put about 40 to 50 rupees per square feet every year as an increased profit to their own pocket. And with the same 40 to 50 rupees, the owner, if they invest 80 rupees per square feet for indoor air quality improvement, the payback time is only 2 years. So if the tenant benefits, the actual person working in the building benefits, the owner benefits, the HVAC consultant benefits because there is more work, the contractor benefits, the manufacturers benefits, why don't we do it? Here is like 3 cases, office, hotel, retail, everywhere. In the retail store, 1 kurta sold more because you have clean air inside the store, attracting people to come in. In the hotel, 1% increase in the occupancy ratio pays back the investment in less than 3 years. So it is business for you, it is business for your clients. We just need to make people to start think differently. This is not an increased maintenance cost. This is more business and healthier people in India and lower healthcare costs in the long run. So now to the technical solution part. Gautam said 400 BC. I go actually a little bit longer back. The technology we require for indoor air quality management was actually invented about 170,000 years ago. It was the time when humans started to look to shelter from the weather, and they moved into the caves. And then they started to feel a little bit chilly because there was lots of natural cooling and a little bit dampness, and they lit a fire. And this was like a real death or life situation, because if you didn't know that the smoke had to go out, you simply died. Because the carbon monoxide levels went so high, so you died. So you didn't anymore, you were not there to continue the human race. Only those people survived who knew that there have to be a hole on the roof, and this hole on the roof is called ventilation. And ventilation has been taken care in all the old buildings in India, in Finland, in America, in Australia, anywhere in the world. Only when people started to do air conditioning, somehow they forgot the ventilation. So we just simply need to reinvent the ventilation in the buildings. There is a study published this year by Harvard School of Public Health, where they actually define the 9 foundations for healthy buildings, and ventilation is number 1. They say that most of the person's exposure to outdoor air pollution actually happens in indoors because we don't filter properly. They actually recommend that 20 CFM per person is not enough. You should go to 40 CFM as an outdoor air intake. I don't want to call it fresh air, it's outdoor air. And there is like a decades of research showing the benefits of higher outdoor air ventilation rates. And still what we do, the energy consultant comes to the building and says that you have to close the outdoor air intake or reduce it to improve the energy efficiency. So they say that the cognitive performance in their studies increased from 62% to 70%, which actually means the $6,500 increase in salary per person with $40 cost in US. So isn't it a good investment to invest that $40 for the energy if you get this much payback as a productivity? Another study from LPNL Berkeley showing the impact of CO2 to the decision making and the cognitive performance. And again you see the black dots, oh this doesn't work. The black dots here, they are the 2500 ppm level, the blue dots are 1000 ppm, and the white dots are 600 ppm. And then you have different kind of activities like focused activity, task orientation, information use, it's information search and so on. So in most of the criteria, the human performance improved significantly when the CO2 levels were lower. So now then, why this ventilation is actually such a good thing in the buildings? First of all, if we cannot remove people. So we have to have people inside the building because we built the buildings for people. So the CO2 emissions are there. That's one of the emissions we cannot really remove. So the only practical way to reduce the CO2 level in the buildings is actually to bring the low CO2 concentration outdoor air into the building, which then is pushed out with the higher concentration of CO2. This is called dilution. We dilute the CO2 as we dilute many other indoor pollutants as well. Different parameters has the different dilution efficiency, but if we take the 0.5 air change airflow rate, which is like an ISHRAE airflow, minimum airflow rate, we actually can see that already that minimum fresh air dilutes about 60% of indoor pollutants. The best room air purifiers reduces 70 to 80%. So the basic ventilation is equally good than the best air purifiers. The bad air purifiers can't even compete with this one. And if we would increase the ventilation rate to about 2 air changes per hour, we can already dilute 90% of all the indoor pollutants. But then now in India, of course, we have a big challenge because our outdoor air is not fresh air. It's a very polluted air. There are particulate matter, there are lots of traffic gases, there are industrial gases in the outdoor air. So what we need to do is 2 things. We have to take the air in a controlled manner inside the building, and we have to filter it. We have to stop the infiltration, and stopping the infiltration is a positive pressurization, what Gautam was talking earlier. We need a positive pressure against the outdoor air to keep the pollution outside. So now, like in the hospitals, we all know that in hospitals we need to do the pressurization, but we also need to do the pressurization in every occupied spaces. The scale is not as wide, and maybe the pascals are not as high, but the living spaces have to be in the higher pressure than the outdoor air, or the dirty areas like the bathrooms and so on. And then we need the filters. And we don't have time now to go through every filtration technology. But I just want to say that, first of all, there is no one filter that filters everything. You need to know what do you want to remove and where and why, and then you can choose the sufficient filtration technology. We also need to remember that every single filtration technology, including outdoor air supply, has also some possible byproducts. And this is where now the problem comes when we like the mechanical filter. Gautam was already talking about the bacteria and virus growing there and starting to release it back to the air. If not that severe byproducts, it starts to smell if it stays too long in the system. But then let's take another example, photocatalytic oxidization. First of all, it produces carbon dioxide, but and in principle, you should get only carbon dioxide and water out, but there is a lots of research papers published in the recent years showing that actually the oxidization process is not complete, and some of these, especially when they are installed into the room air purifiers, the VOC levels are actually higher after the filter than they were before the filter. Gases are different, but the TVOC levels are higher. So if you don't understand the technology, don't use it. Because there are lots of technologies that you can understand and use safely, and then only start to implement the more complicated technologies if you truly know what they are and how they work. We do not, and now the HEPA filter is, again, it's a bit difficult word in India, because in India we have this word semi-HEPA, which actually doesn't exist at all. There is no semi-HEPA. Semi-HEPA in the rest of the world is called fine filter. We have coarse filter, medium filter, fine filter, and then we have HEPA filters. HEPA filters are the filters that has very high pressure loss. They are all individually tested. So we don't need HEPA filters in the normal ventilation system, but we need fine filters. So the G4 filter that we have in our air handling units is the filter to protect the cooling coil, but it is not the filter to remove the PM2.5 out from the airflow. And then we come to another India-specific problem, which is this 10, 5, 3 and 1 micron filter. 1 micron filter is a filter that uses the same filter media than MERV 1415 filter. But it has not been tested, typically neither the manufacturer or any third party has been testing the filters. Now, let's take the pack filter. The needle, you have stitched the filter together. One needle hole was not protected properly. That one needle hole, which is 0.5 millimeter, simultaneously 40,000 PM2.5 particles can swim through that one single hole. And that's where the big problem is with these 1 micron or 5 micron filters, that the media is right, but you still don't know how the filter actually filters. Electrostatic precipitator is a quite good technology due to the low pressure loss, but you have to take care of the ozone. You need chemical filters or molecular filters or active carbon filters, whatever name you want to use and model you want to use, to remove the gases, but they don't have any impact on the particulate matter, neither the microbiological contamination. And then if you need to sterilize the air, then of course you need to think about the technologies. Do you want to collect the microbiological contamination, or do you want to kill it, or do you want to do the both? And based on these requirements, then you have to choose the sufficient technologies. But one thing I say, that you don't need, you shouldn't sterilize the environments for healthy people, only sterilize the environments for people who are already ill. And then the last item is the volatile organic compounds, and of course in any kind of environment, if we can remove the sources, it is good. And with VOCs we can remove the source, but like viruses and bacteria we cannot remove the source because the source is people. But both of these actually will be taken care again with the dilution. So if we just have a proper ventilation and we ensure that the ventilation is happening in every space, we balance the ductwork properly, we have a properly working ventilation system. We don't even need an air conditioning. We can just build a ventilation. We don't have to cool the school if we don't have money to air condition the school, but we have to ventilate the school. Some climates, some areas, it can be naturally ventilated, somewhere it can be mechanically ventilated. But at least we need filters and fan if the outdoor air is polluted. And then there is actually very little role for the room air purifiers, which is the fastest growing industry at the moment in India. You can't believe how people are rushing to the shops now to buy the room air purifiers, which actually may be more harmful to their health than useful, which doesn't really properly remove the particulate matter, neither the gases or the microbiological contamination. So why we as an industry has given this entire topic, which is our domain, now to the hands of room air purifier manufacturers? It's not their goodness, it's actually our weakness, that we don't design the buildings that the air quality is already taking care. And just in the end, okay, like I said earlier, that ventilation is more efficient than room air purifier. And this table actually shows Here on the left, I have the outdoor air quality pollution level from 50 to 600 microgram per cubic meter. If we have 2 air changes per hour ventilation, it actually gives us up to 600 unacceptable indoor air quality. If we put a room air purifier, it can manage it up to 200, 250 microgram, but not beyond that one. How, where and when the room air purifier should be used is that when we have allergic and asthmatic people, last slide, whose immunity is already reduced, and we put the room air purifier to the space where the general ventilation has already done the big job, then we can really receive the really low indoor pollution levels. So, as a summary, the equipment is actually not the thing that kind of specifies the good indoor air quality or bad indoor air quality. In all these applications, we have kind of filters, we have cooling coils, we have fans and so on. But those applications where we have taken care of the ventilation and the filtration, regardless what kind of arrangements you have done, gives us the good air quality. And you are the people to do it. Thank you.